Okay, here are the breach tenets. You need to have intelligence on where you're going. You need to understand what's at the obstacle, who's at the obstacle, and what you're facing, or you may stop the whole brigade combat team for a single strand of wire that somebody put across the road. You need to understand breach organization. If you command a maneuver company, raise your hand. What are the organization for a breach? How do you organize for a breach? That's right. Assault, secure, and breach force. Okay. It's really assault, support, and breach force, but that's good. The breach fundamentals. Once you're organized for the breach and you know what you're up against, you execute your breach fundamentals, and we all know what those are, right? They are suppress, obscure, secure, reduce. Once you've got your mind around all that, and these are the things you think through, and I'm giving them to you in chronological sequence. I believe bypass makes sense is in chronological sequence. Starts with intelligence. Think about how you're going to get organized. You make sure you have your breach fundamentals and your fires plan in place, and then you employ mass. Very quickly on mass, what is the right force ratio for an assault on a trench line? 3 to 1, right? So here we have a squad. So the assault force will be a... Isn't that hard? Come on, guys. Right? I will tell you, when you set your support force, it needs to be the same size as your assault force. Maneuver commanders, remember that. So if you got a platoon to assault, and you want the right mass, you need a platoon to support, because you want to neutralize the enemy's fire on the obstacle before you proceed. So if you're breaching against an objective with a squad, you need 1 platoon, 2 platoons, and a reduction element. It's essentially a company mission. If you see a squad in the central corridor that's supported by an obstacle, you have a company mission. If you see a platoon in the central corridor that's supported by an obstacle, what should be the size of your assault force? What should be the size of your support force? Whose fight does that become really quickly? Roger. Okay. Mass. That's mass. And synchronization. That's the last one. It's understanding that we talk about a lot of enablers in a breach. Smoke, fires, electronic warfare, UAV feeds. The guy pulling all this together, because what we love to say at my level, because it's much easier really, is I love to say, Company X is going to do an in-stride breach. We've given them the assets. They're going to figure it out on the fly, and they're going to keep moving. The guy trying to synchronize all that has got a couple radios inside a tank turret. It gets complicated. You're going to get help. It's okay. Every enabler like me thinks they're the most important one, and they're going to try to choke your net. That's your job, and we'll talk about that later today. Last 2 remarks, and we'll go through what is this is a 10-minute walkthrough. So there's plenty of time for questions. The last thing I want to say is, bypasses are overwatched. Bypasses are overwatched, obstacles are overwatched. My favorite way to kill the tank when I was a light fighter is I'd put an 11 row in the road with a clear bypass and bury mines in the bypass. Works every single time. Be careful when you see an obstacle. Bypasses are overwatched. On the other hand, what you don't want to do is have a squad-size element in the central corridor halt the entire Armored Brigade Combat Team's movement because you're going to stop and do something extremely deliberate. Here's the last thing I'm going to say. My decisive point as the enabler battalion commander for this brigade is the success of the maneuver company. This whole LPD, is focused at the company level to empower you to do in-stride and hasty breaching at the company level. This is not a division river crossing LPD with staging areas. This is not a battalion staff drill. This is all oriented on what that soldier with captain's bars in that tank turret needs to do to continue through an in-stride breach against a very small element without stopping the entire brigade combat team. I'm going to turn it over to my 3 and let him talk. Does anybody have any questions at all? All right. like Colonel Brown said, this will be a very good venue for questions. If you're trying to wait and ask your question in private so that you're the smartest captain in the brigade and you can get an ACOM, you're screwing all your buddies. Roger? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Major Phillips, and he's going to walk us through it.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Daggers. My name is Major Phillips, and I'm the S3 for the 82nd Engineer Battalion. In front of you, you see the map of the National Training Center. To orient you to the map, to the south, we have a baseline Dallas. We have a task force that is moving north, generally along Avenue Approach Dagger. Their objective is Objective Maginot up here north of Alpha Pass, and we have some phase lines that are applicable to the task force level maneuver. Our company team is moving along this Avenue Approach Dagger to task force phase line as part of this larger operation. En route, a reconnaissance system spots what appears to be a complex obstacle overwatched by a small enemy strong point. Battalion S3 calls the company team commander, directs the execute a breach, and destroy the strong point. The company team halts its formation behind cover and rapidly plans for a hasty breach. Its current task organization is 2 mechanized infantry platoons, 1 armored platoon, and 1 engineer section consisting of 2 assault breacher vehicles and a dismounted sapper squad. He executes the reverse breach planning process, applying the breach tenets. His primary concern is the size and the composition of both the enemy and the obstacle.
Thunder 2, this is Crusher 6. What does the objective and obstacle look like? Over.
Crusher 6, this is Thunder 2. The objective is a small enemy trench line with 2 fighting positions. They appear to be an overwatch of a minefield and a tank ditch, roughly 1,000 meters to their south. We observe 6 enemy personnel at this time. Over.
Thunder 2, Crusher 6. Roger.
This is the first of the breaching tenements. The commander must understand as best as possible what may be on the objective. This will scope the size of the assault force and determine the breach organization. This commander will at least need a platoon-sized element. The second breaching tenement is breaching fundamentals, saussure, suppress, obscure, secure, reduce, and assault. The commander works with this mnemonic to organize his plan. He knows that the 2 attached AVVs and engineer squad can reduce lanes through tank ditches, wire, and about 300 meters of linear obstacle heavy mine effort. He and his FSO work out the hasty breach fires plan with the battalion FSO.
Thunder 3-4, this is Crusher 5-1. Request target grids. November Victor 5-2-3-5-1-0. 2 tree break. November Victor 5-1 3-0 1-1 6-2 with linear smoke target. November Victor 5-2-4-0 0-9 7-6 break length 400 attitude 1500.
Crusher 5-1, this is Thunder 3-4. Approved target numbers Alpha Bravo 4010 break. Alpha Bravo 4015 break. Linear smoke target. Target number Alpha Bravo 4000 out.
The commander follows the 3rd lieutenant's breach organization and designates his platoons accordingly and organizes his attached engineers. The combined arms breach team consists of 3 components: the support force, the breach force, and the assault force. The preferred location for the commander is with the support force. The support force is responsible for creating and maintaining the conditions of the reduction area, allowing for a successful breach. These conditions include adequate obscuration and no effective direct fires placed onto the reduction area. The purpose of the breach force is to reduce a lane through an enemy's obstacle network and bypass past an assault force. Typically, this force has sufficient resources to provide far and near-side security and execute the breach. The assault force has the primary function of establishing and maintaining a foothold on the far side of the reduction area. The commander applies the tenets of mass to ensure that he has the weight of effects required to push through the obstacle and destroy the enemy on the objective. Lastly, he applies his hasty breach battle drill and runs through a rehearsal off of an execution checklist, fulfilling the last of our breaching tenets, which is synchronization.
All units, be prepared to move. Thunder 3, Crusher 6. LD for attack position 1 on AA Dagger to objective Bob. Time 1120.
This is Thunder 3, Roger.
All units, this is Crusher 6, moving to support by fire position 1.
As the company team reaches checkpoint 16, designated by the commander, the support force continues to move along to support by fire position 1 and begins to suppress the far side objective.
Thunder 3-4, this is Crusher 5-1. Fire target Alpha Bravo 4015. Over.
Crusher 5-1, Thunder 3-4, fire target number Alpha Bravo 4015, out.
The company suppresses the enemy on the objective. Once the commander has confirmed the enemy can no longer place effective direct fires on the obstacle, he calls a spare on the net, first down on both battalion and company, again confirming the enemy is suppressed.
All units, this is Crusher 6, first down.
Simultaneously, the FSO begins to fire the linear smoke target.
Thunder 3-4, this is Crusher 5-1. Ceasefire Alpha Bravo 4015. Break. Fire target Alpha Bravo 4000. Activate CFC 003. Over.
Crusher 5-1, Thunder 3-4, ceasefire target number Alpha Bravo 4015, break. Fire target number Alpha Bravo 4000, break. Activate CFC 003, out.
It is completely possible, especially when you're in an open area like the National Training Center around the desert, that you may be firing both missions at the same time.
All units, Crusher 6, second down.
6, this is White 1. Roger, over.
Okay, second down confirms that obscuration is successfully placed between the enemy strong point and the breaching force. The breach force maneuvers to the reduction area and establishes local security. The near side section leader suppresses any immediate threats to the reduction area. The breach team leader calls on company net to spare third down, indicating the breach team has established near side security.
6, this is White 1. Third down, over.
White 1, Crusher 6, roger. All units, this is Crusher 6, third down.
Now the ABV with the combat dozer blade reduces the tank ditch and sets its far side security to the tank ditch. The TC of this ABV calls any pertinent information of the obstacle composition to the breach team leader. The reason why we do this is sometimes we just don't know what's on the other side of that tank ditch. They can be pretty tall. The second ABV with the full width plow advances through the lane created by the other ABV, and upon exiting the ditch, drops his plow, builds spoiled, and advances to roughly 50 meters from the leading edge of the minefield. Fires his MICLIC. Our MICLIC sits into our minefield of heavy anti-tank mines, detonates. The ABV driver and TC use the blast seat of the rocket to line up and get through the breach. Upon exiting the lane, that team leader calls the exiting of the lane and makes sure that it is proofed and assumes far side security of the reduction area. The breach team leader calls the spare fourth down, indicating the lane is both reduced and proofed.
6, this is White 1. Fourth down, over.
White 1, Crusher 6, roger. All units, this is Crusher 6, fourth down.
When engineers go through any sort of obstacle effort, we do four things when we do our planning. We reduce, we proof, we mark, and we have some sort of redundancy on there. The new assault breacher vehicle that you'll see here out in a minute at the BSA example that we have out here has a lane marking system. But that lane marking system will only mark the width of the track. We still have to do our initial entry, our funnels, to complete our initial entry standards. An engineer section in their ODSC follows the ABV through the breach, verifying the lane and finalizing initial marking at the exit. They call the breach force team leader and take up far side security. That team leader calls the spare touchdown, indicating the lane is marked and open for one-way traffic.
6, this is White 1. Touchdown. I say again, touchdown, over.
White 1, this is Crusher 6, roger. All units, this is Crusher 6, touchdown.
This is Blue 1, all units, touchdown acknowledged, executing, over.
The assault force leader moves through the lane and advances to the objective. The FSO, if needed, shifts or lifts fires depending on the enemy situation.
This is the piece where we get hung up the most often. What normally happens when you call touchdown is precisely when the enemy will either fire a reseat mission on the obstacle, or you will have a 113 ambulance break down in your one lane you created for your company. Generally, we'll do you'll have a redundant breach means with your assault element so that you can handle either a recovery of a vehicle or you can handle a secondary breach. Because usually, that sounds very simple, like touchdown, assault force, no problem. That's usually when we get hung up.
our sapper squads will dismount the rear of the ODSEs and grapple their way up to the protective obstacle. Sapper squads then reduce 3 footpaths into the protective obstacle, allowing the dismounted platoon to assault the enemy strong point. Upon completion of the assault, the commander moves the support force from support by fire position 1 and establishes security on the far side of the obstacle. We've reduced the lane. This could be a point of penetration for a larger force. This may just be a company team breach. Regardless, the engineers will continue through intermediate and full lane marking standards, and we will start looking to sight in a second lane.
Thunder 3, Crusher 6, lane height open for one-way traffic. Grid, break, November, Victor, 525-00860. Break, objective Bob, clear, slant follows.
Our company commander has successfully applied the breaching tenets, a good hasty breach and battle drill, projected combat power to the far side of a complex obstacle, and achieved his mission. Are there any questions at this time? Great question. So the question was, if we do not have a MICLIC, what are the options for a breach? So there's a lot of discussion on this subject. The tank plow, the ABV plow. The testing that was done on those was done on heavy anti-tank mines that have 20 or 30 pounds of HE inside of them. It's the opinion of a lot of engineers that scat mine don't have that. Plus, most scat mine have anti-handling devices. As soon as the spoil from the plow hits them, they'll detonate the mines. So in that case, I think that the ABV plow or a tank plow would be a great option because that's fast. Manual options include dismounted sappers with poppet drops. So the sapper would grapple his way up to the objective, find the mines through probing, and place poppet drops after they've marked all the mines, and come back to some sort of a ballistic shelter, whether it's a Bradley, a ditch, and wait for the time used to detonate. A little bit slower down. Great question, thank you.
How many hits can the ABV take from the line?
Pardon me?
How many hits can the ABV take?
One more. It's like a news thing. Look. That's a great question. The question was, how many hits can the ABV take? Nobody knows. Anybody that says that, hey, your plow will take 3 hits is full of it. Because what did they do? They drove over what?
They flip the mines over.
They flip it. They do something. So the point is that it's going to be until it doesn't work anymore. And that's where the redundancy comes in. That's why we always plan our redundancy, whether it's in reducing, proofing, or marking. We always put extra sappers out there because doctrinally, now thankfully it hasn't happened this way, but doctrinally, as a commander, what is your planned loss at a breach? 50%, right? So if you're an engineer going through the breach, you got to have 2 teams to mark because one team may not make it. That's your redundancy. That's a great question. Nobody knows. Okay?
Can you use field artillery on a minefield?
You could use field artillery on a minefield.
And it works. And it works. It's a great breaching tool. 155 is a great breaching tool. Not 50 cal.
I've seen that before.
It works.
I've seen that.
155 is a breaching tool. Works less well at NTC. But it works. I've seen it work.
Typically, what is that support by fire for that breaching team? What does that consist of from an engineer perspective? Like I can envision a infantry support by fire. What is that in this case? What is the composition of it?
Frankly, it's exactly that. It is literally a support by fire, just as you described. There's generally not much of an engineer element with the support by fire, because all their task is to suppress. So generally, that's going to be something heavy, like tanks. Probably the most casualty producing weapon system that company commander has, which is probably his B-fist. That's about it. It's about the ability, whoever goes here must mass sufficient fires to suppress the enemy on the objective. And we just don't bring much to the fight in that regard. We do it at the local level, at the near and far side security.
So as a neighbor, then you're managing the actual breaching team. All that assault, obviously, and that support by fire then is made up by the maneuver elements itself. Your attacks do.
Yeah, so the engineers are task organized generally underneath the breach force, or breach team. So the breach team could be an infantry platoon leader or an armored platoon leader, depending on whether you're tank heavy or Brad heavy, and then you're just additional combat power to them. Their primary responsibility of that team leader, breach team leader, as the, I'll say the maneuver guy, whether it's an armor or infantry guy, is to provide security for those engineers doing work. The engineers at Bradley can secure themselves, however, probably not the best guys to be full near and far side security.
But that's a great question. I want to kind of be redundant with what he said, because I think the maneuver commanders want to know, how do I task organize my engineers? Most of them go in the breach force, but when you have redundant or other engineers, where would they go? The assault force, right? Somebody's got to get you through the protective obstacles. So somebody's going to get you through the final protective wire on the objective, and that same asset will be your redundancy asset in case there's a reseat. So you got most of your engineers in your breach force and an element with your assault force.
Sir, I just want to say something to that. I think we should say that breaching is a maneuver task, and reducing is the engineer task. Say that the maneuver element owns the breach, the engineer is the one that's going to go take care of the minefield.
Yeah. Okay, so when my scouts were looking forward, we identified an area. Now they said bypass speed, great place to put the mine. Absolutely. So let's say it's just a wire obstacle. What can we do as a scout platoon, scout troop that doesn't have engineer assets with it? What can we do to continue our movement of contact, continue our zone of contact? And what information that you guys actually need to know, like depth and distance away? So you guys can plan for the tabs and plan for the breach.
That is an excellent question. So the question was, if I'm a scout and I'm out front and I identify an obstacle, what do I do? It's not going to stop me. It's essential that that obstacle intelligence gets reported both analog and digital immediately. It gets populated onto your JCR, your BFT. We understand doctrinally how to report it. And it also goes up through the FM nets with confirmation. You should have engineers with it because we have task organized engineer reconnaissance teams to 5-4. And so they'll be able to help you guys out. But really, knowing what obstacles do, you have to remember, I'm going to back up just a second because I want to tackle that question with you. Thanks for the question. All that's happening right now, as Crusher 6 here is driving north, he's driving into my engagement area. I'm the enemy engineer. And all I want to do, I'm an objective Maginot right here, is I'm going to kill you right there. So anything you run into is a shaping off for the enemy. And that's the perspective you got to have. It's like, why is this wire here? What's the direction of it? What's its task and purpose? And as you start thinking through that, that can help feed that great obstacle intelligence that can pump higher and paint a picture for the battalion or the brigade too on really what the enemy's trying to get after. If that makes sense. Thanks for the question. Great question.
I want to pile on. So depth. So the things, I'm going to start at the kind of the higher tactical and go to low tactical. The higher tactical level, you want to look for the depth of the obstacle, because it's never the first strand of wire that's the first tank ditch. The way most engineers friendly at enemy think is that you lay an obstacle belt at the same depth as it is wide. So if I'm even doing a disrupt obstacle, if it's 2 kilometers wide, it's probably 2 kilometers deep, just with different obstacles interspersed, even if I don't have enough. So look for depth, and at the low tactical level, I will say, look for spacing between mines, surface or buried, and furrows. And here's why. A GMZ will put a mine down every 4 meters. A tracked mine layer, which is a HVT, will put a mine down every 4 meters in a furrow like a farm plow. A UMZ will surface lay a mine every 5 meters that's just laid on the surface. Humans won't replicate a UMZ pattern, so if you see them neatly spaced at 5 meters surface laid, you found an enemy HVT. So spacing, but not just spacing, regularity. They say you need an engineer for what I just told you. It ain't that complicated. Is there a furrow or isn't there? And is the spacing 4 or 5 meters? And is it regular or irregular? Those 3 questions will answer a lot of the brigade commanders' IRs.
And one further point, sir. As the task force is moving towards objective Maginot, because you triggered a key word with me there, sir. If if I were an S2 drawing a template, what part of the enemy's battle is this? I heard it. The disruption zone. So all the enemy's trying to do is the same exact thing we're trying to do, which is making sure that my one company can defend against three by making sure my one company only fights one company at a time and not three at a time. So I'm trying to break up your tempo, and I'm trying to break up your formations, disrupt your synchronization. Those obstacles are not going to be like these. You see obstacles like this, what might you have just found? Yep. Thank you. Do you have any further questions?
Hey Rob, can you talk about how long this would take to do the reduction, and then what assets that you guys bring, number of tubs, and what that actually does in terms of length that you can reduce?
Sure, sir. So the question was, how long would this take? At the task force level, this is about a 30 to 45 minute mission because there's shaping fires, shaping ops, big moving pieces. A hasty breach on something like this should probably take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, I reckon. That's if the obstacle intelligence is good, you don't really have any surprises, and you have all your equipment up and running. Now, the assault breacher vehicle has 2 MICLIC rockets. And I give 20 minutes if we have our ABVs. The ABVs out there, we'll take a look at it here in a minute. It has 2 rockets and can clear 2 lanes. If you know where the leading edge of the minefield is, that could potentially give you 200 meters of a reduced lane. If you don't, you lose some of that. The second thing is that same system has a full width plow. So you save a lot of time and not having to have, in the old days, either an Acer or Bradley would drive up, or a 113, fire the MICLIC, charge would go off, and then that 113 has to get out of the way so that a tank can come in and start plowing. And then it's only going to go so far in, and another 113 or Ace has got to come up behind that tank and then fire another rocket. That took forever. With the assault breacher vehicle, that one system moves up, drops his blade, and fires his rocket, proofs his own lane, marks his own lane, and I've got about 150 to 200 meters of obstacle reduction in one system that takes place as fast as that guy can drive through. So that's why I'm kind of optimistic on time, if you have those systems. If you don't have those systems, it's a lot longer, and frankly, it's going to take as long as the skill of the guys driving the vehicles.
I think it's a belt an hour. And if you have runners, already engineers, and you have
Not tracking, it always takes longer, but this is really for the group, the S4s, the FSOs, to think through how long this stuff really takes.
But I think about a belt an hour. I think we don't really know what the ABVs are capable of because we don't have enough direction. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think. That's what
So
we don't even really know. We don't really know. Yeah, but we as an army don't really know what they're capable of. So we don't really have to rev. I don't think they've been field tested for that.
I had a chance to go out to NTC in March of 12 and watch the third ID took some ABVs to NTC. It took them a long time to get to the obstacle, but not get through the obstacle. So I think all the shaping obstacles, I mean, you're right, sir. We don't know what we don't know. And it'd be very exciting to find out something and maybe put some timings down.
Well, just to flesh out what Colonel Stewart's saying, Rob, you've OC'd dozens, maybe even 100 breaches at NTC. What's the fastest you've seen through a belt, and what's the slowest, and give me an average?
I'm looking at Major Kaufman because, that's, so you can go from
no lifeline. No lifeline.
Yeah, no lifeline. You've seen them.
No lifeline. This is not.
Go ahead, Ross.
What is that?
No, so
Yeah.
this is why this is important, and the colonels here have hit the point. Nobody really has done this in a while. I sat in Red Pass as an OC watching a Talon robot go up to a strand of wire that wasn't dug in. I mean, it was like in the middle of sand because the tankers driving up with their plows saw a single strand of wire on the ground and thought they saw an IED in it. It stopped an entire task force. One roll of concertina wire with a Hooks IED. And then the Op 4 very patiently waited for the EOD team and the Buffalo because we're in Red Pass doing a breach. But the reality is we're fighting some coin crap, right? We're going to bring up and then the Talon robot goes out. And I have a picture somewhere of a Talon robot pulling on the wire with 2 tanks behind him. I'm not making this up. This is where we're at, folks. I mean, it's serious. And what he's supposed to happen once all that crap got in the middle of Red Pass? The 2 AT-5 positions that were on the high ground patiently waiting for all that stuff to get into the middle, fired down, destroyed the Jerv, destroyed the Buffalo, and destroyed the 2 Abrams. What's a tougher obstacle to reduce? Some scat mine, or about, 180 tons of steel in a room that's, Red Pass at its most narrow point is about the width of this map. So that one there took, golly, 12 hours. It was horrible. The one the 3rd ID did, once they finished their approach march and they got there, they completed the whole thing in probably about 3 hours, and that was with the MICLIC misfire. And that ate up about 45 minutes. What can happen sometimes is if you fire the MICLIC, the tether of the MICLIC can sever. It's a line, it's a rope. And so if that happens, you got to go through all your misfire procedures. Ordinarily, ABB, just lift the other one firing. Or Medal of Honor run what we would do as engineers. We'll run out, put a charge on it, hope for the best.
So I think one of the problems, one of the ways we think about breaching is not the way we think about maneuver. So breach is very sequential. We don't do a lot of things simultaneous. So a lot of what you're talking about, getting through a breach or actually executing the reduction, is quick. Getting through, it's all the actions that precede. So you start becoming so deliberate and so slow. Instead of being simultaneous, we're doing things very sequentially and deliberately. So it's almost like going off a checklist. That we lose the mentality of the aggression when we run into an obstacle. That's part of the problem. That's why it takes so long up front. And so you need reps in order to get that.
Yeah, I agree. And company commanders, I would just ask yourself, what condition do you want to create to be successful? That should always be running through your mind. If I'm executing a breach, what's more important? Is it suppressing that objective? Is it suppressing an avenue of approach that's coming in? Are they going to be reinforced? What conditions do you want to create on the objective to be successful? Any further questions? Sir?
Yeah. So this is helpful. It just occurred to me that I'm not an expert on recovery operations of vehicles in a minefield. So quickly, let's revisit that thing that Colonel Bullock brought up about the vehicle getting hit in the lane, becoming disabled in the lane. What is the recommended way to recover that? Is it push it out of the way? Is it push it forward and use it to breach if it's the lead vehicle? Is it pull it backwards?
You push it through.
Okay.
Because you can't really pull it backwards.
Yeah.
You can't really pull it out. Generally, you just push it forward.
Makes a great mind plow.
Not an expert, but sounds like a very difficult thing to do.
Yes, sir. And underwriting that one to try it out might not happen until it actually happens.
Yeah, we might rehearse that. All right.
Yep.
Well, and the other thing is just, and this is a brief point, but the medevac, CASEVAC in a lane requires a certain linear approach, as you might imagine. Right? You go up to the vehicle in the lane, you recover casualties off the back, so you're not trying to drive around in the minefield. Then you pull casualties straight out. Then recovery vehicle either goes up to push, or you try a bypass lane.
I think we need to develop a TTP for that. Otherwise, I think we're going to bog down in the breach lane. It's going to happen. Something's going to break down in that lane.
Or be destroyed.
Yeah. And sir, I think if that were to happen, and a good TTP would be if I can't push it, I just open a lane parallel.
Yeah.
And we have the system that can do that. So we'll show you out here in a minute. The ABB can actually slew as well.
Okay.
It's not like I said, it's a pretty capable system. The MICLIC may not always fly straight, but we can do some course corrections with the turret and the ABB. Another thing I would like commanders and first sergeants here to think about though is nighttime. Doing this during the day is difficult enough. Doing it at nighttime is really difficult. What are lane marking systems that everybody can see through thermals? What are the funnels going to look like at brigade level? We have stuff in the brigade tax op. I would just ask that you become familiar with that, so don't be surprised by stuff when we get out to the training center. Any further questions?
So does the ABB have, on the old ODS probably, since the engineers have smoke capabilities, does the ABB have smoke
No, it does not. But it does have Class 5, you know, those reactive armor plates on its bases.
It's going to make a lot of smoke when it gets hit,
Yeah.
what he's saying.
So we do have that going for us. But that's a great question because one of the tenets is obscuration. What are your options in terms of obscuration? If you're going up to wire, so what would typically happen is there'd be some sort of a smoke off, and the security element moves forward. They're chucking smoke pots to continue that obscuration. They're chucking smoke to keep it up so those guys can get through, whether it's wire or mines, depending on what level you're doing a breach. But some of that capability, like you just described, is gone. You know, I think there's one chemical company left that can do smoke. So it is hard. But there are other ways to obscure. And I think we were talking about, I heard a new term not too long, which was shake and bake. That was one of them. And, you know, HE will kick up a lot of dust. You can also obscure through other fires, such as electronic. You can, you know, think through the spectrum. What is forms of contact?
What you want to do is lift. You don't want to stop. What you don't want to do is you want to cease loading on one mission, fire the next mission. So you lift and shift. You just shift. All right, Josh. You just shift. Don't stop shooting. Everybody, hey, let's go smoke a cigar. We're done. Negative. Just lift, cease loading, move to HE, and start making them getting their foxholes and keeping them down. The big problem is when you're in the breach, especially if you're down there, you got to look up. Somebody's watching you. Somebody may be getting ready to shoot you with an AT system. So you got to report that, and then that's got to get fed back in so we can do immediate suppression on that. That's what you want to shift to. You don't want to shift just to some targeted, templated, this is a TAI, NAI. Okay, I got it. What's in front of me? Who's shooting at me? Immediate suppression. Put it on the people that are shooting at you when you're in that position.
So I had a comment on fires and then really a question. One thing that we do a lot is we do a linear smoke target for a breach and we isolate the obstacle from the objective, right? Right? The problem with that, if it builds heavy, is that the assault force is essentially driving itself into an ambush, right? I mean, we've created a big wall of smoke, the assault force goes through, and when they come out of the smoke on the other side, they're now danger close in someone else's engagement area. So what you need to do before you do smoke, it's suppress, then obscure, is establish superiority of fire from your support force onto the objective, get as much casualty count as you can, suppress as much as you can, neutralize the enemy fires, then you smoke so that you're not walking your assault force right into an objective. All the assets we just talked about are brigade assets, I believe, right? And we're talking about battalions and companies calling brigade for DS fires. We're not talking necessarily mortars. Available, but not as effective. So what I was talking to the FSO about a little bit was developing a fires package that's ready on call to support in-stride breaches that is just ready in the howitzer turrets. And I don't know how that would work, but I thought it was worth discussion.
I think you'll have almost as much effect if you achieve surprise, and you can get a serious shock effect by rapid in-stride breaching using mortars from the task force. If the task force owns the mission, if it's a company, but go ahead and change priority of fire and assign priority of fire, shake and bake, and continue to work that and develop the situation, and we'll try to reprioritize. But I may not can move the whole. It depends on where we're engaged. If you're not the main effort, you may not get much. But some reassurance. Good job. You got them. You found them. Good job. Keep after it. Don't get killed. As much as you can, developing that at the task force level is really the right thing.
Sir, if I can add on.
Please.
So a turret load for the Paladins for 1-7 is going to consist of 4 15-minute 500-meter smoke screens. That's all they have on their turrets in the entire battalion. So unless they order a CCL for a brigade SOSRA mission, and I give them a fire support task at the brigade level, provide obscuration, they're not going to have any more smoke than that unless they get it from the BSA or from their CTCP. So you have to think about that. And if I'm firing something that's brigade fire support task or replacing fast cam, that ties up one of my batteries. There goes those smoke rounds until we can get them from that battery to another battery potentially. So you got to think of mortars, you got to think of other options.
challenge your FSOs to come up with a better alternative than just FA fires, because it might not be available for shooting something for the brigade.
So 4 15-minute,
500-meter smoke screens.
so really an hour, or 2 30 minutes, or...
Yes, sir.
And that's what you got for turret load.
Yes, sir.
Great questions. Keep coming if you have any more questions.
So mine's more of a comment. Just the crowd I wanted to share with. We did NTC not too long ago, and just a safety aspect. It was a night breach. We had guys out on the ground doing their initial marking. The assault forces coming through. You know, of course, they're tanks swinging the barrel over the right side as they're going through the lane, and our engineers had not pulled off out of the way enough, and the bustle rack clipped the side of the 113 and ripped all the rucks off. So we were lucky from that aspect that there wasn't more damage, but also we had guys out on the ground at the same time. So just something to think about as you're going through that, you know, everybody's eyes on the prize, but don't forget, you know, one little thing of, you know, our guys not pulling off enough, and then the turret swinging over to the side. It got lucky we just clipped a vehicle and didn't have somebody in between us there. So kind of think about that when you got a lot of moving pieces out there on the ground.
Hey, Chris, you got anything? You want to jump in on this at all? You just got through doing this. So for those of you that were at LTP, this might sound familiar to you. You could be fooled into thinking that this is a complex operation. And there's a lot of moving pieces. But remember what I said about movement to contact. If you understand the terrain and you are aggressive, like Colonel Brown talked about, and you are lethal, so you've bore sighted, you will be okay. And there's tools in place to help us with these things. One of them is called the Bro Big 9, right? So there's been some talk about that not applying at the company level and the platoon level. Let me show you how that does, okay? So, op order. All right, so when you do your op order, you're probably going to identify avenues of approach that you want to take. You're probably going to identify avenues of approach that the enemy does not want you to take. And there may be a spot where you think you may have to breach, okay? Graphics, so you put that on your graphics and you template fires for those areas. You add those to your graphics, you refine the company graphics or the battalion graphics or the brigade graphics. All right, you do PCCs and PCIs and you make sure all the engineers that are attached to you are with you and can talk to you and have your net and have all their equipment and the marking stuff. And then you rehearse this. So this will become easier if you rehearse it. And if there's, General Funk always likes to talk about, there's rehearsals that you can do regardless of if you know what the mission is. So if you're doing a movement to contact and you know that, and we are going to do movement to contact probably 3 or 4 times at NTC, you can rehearse this right now. And you can get the engineers with you and you can run through it. And the more times you run through it, the easier this will become. Because I was sort of kidding about that you could make this into, this is pretty complex. But at its base root, it's shoot, movement, communicate, right? But the danger is that, you know, that security element doesn't move, and so they die, and then you have no security. And you don't talk to the engineers, and you don't talk to your fire supporters, and then so you don't have the tenets of the breach. So, I don't know, that's all I got. Did you get all that? Yeah. Save that. Okay, so anybody got any other questions? The worst thing that can happen. So I always like to think, if you do composite risk management, is what's the worst thing that can happen? True composite risk management. You die. So if you don't rehearse CASEVAC anywhere else in your op order, I would rehearse it here because there's a good possibility this is where it will happen. And if you haven't thought through the personnel replacement, then you won't be around the next day when the next fight comes. So battle damage assessment and repair, personnel replacement, CASEVAC, medevac. The other thing that you don't realize that you might have to do, James, you might have to actually do this, and then, oh wait, decision point tactics come into play. So guess what? establish a hasty defense, I'm going to pass somebody through you. Whew, here we go. Now I'm doing a passage of lines that I didn't know I was going to do. So if you got to think about that. So you go ahead and rehearse that, even though Dragon 6 never told you that. You just know that what's the worst thing that could happen. I could have to do Casevac, and I could have to do a passage of lines after everything looks good. I'm not hunky dory. I got to do this. So passage of lines. The rule of the breach. My rule of the breach for the brigade. Use what you have. Use what you need, and not a bit more. Everything you don't need, don't use it. So when we are really doing a deliberate breach, we're going to heavily resource you to do that. But if you overuse those assets, and I wrote all this stuff down: smoke, tank plows, sappers. You know, when we do a breach, we just like to throw the sappers on the ground, just throw it at the wire. We do that all the time. We just throw them at the wire. They're gonna magically make it vaporize. We're just gonna throw sappers. I've watched people just deploy the sappers. The guys just run up and they just, they run over. They make, Sergeant Major Orvis lays down, and then somebody runs over the top of him, and then that guy gets killed and he lays down. The next thing you know, we got a human bridge through the obstacle. Well, that's great, but I can't drive a tank through that. So think through that. Ammunition. We way overuse ammunition. We overuse coax and 50 cal in these types of engagements. This is where we run out of coax and 50 cal, and then you're through, and now you're facing the enemy, and what do? Well, I don't know. I don't have any ammo, and I didn't get a resupply ammo last night, and I didn't get any fuel because I was tired, and I didn't establish priorities at work, and I didn't follow troop leading procedures. So you get my point. Dave, to answer your question, so I would want to know is what you see in front of you. First of all, what do you see in front of you? Basically, being a scout, because we're all scouts really, is what do you see in front of you? Tell me what you see. What is in front of you? What's behind you? What's around you? Tell me what you see. Anybody remember doing the listening halts? You go out in the woods, take your helmet off, do a listening halt, close your eyes. What do you see? What do you hear? Communicate what is around you. So the first thing we don't do when we get down and we see an obstacle is we focus on the obstacle. So what I've always tried to preach is, okay, look at the obstacle, get depth, get width, figure out what's the natural terrain it's tied into, look at it from the hills in front of you. So put yourself on the map. So look up and see who's probably looking down at it, and confirm or deny your templated enemy OPs. You may have templated an OP that when you get to the point and you see the obstacle, you realize, oh shit, I'm in the wrong, I got this thing turned around. It's actually, that's the OP, and wait a minute, let me see my binos. There he is. And he's waving at you. He's like, you see me? Because he's kind of, enemy's kind of smart ass. Find him and kill him. Time, spacing, surface, and buried furrows. Task and purpose. Is it a turn? Is it a block? Is it a fix? And then go back in and confirm or deny your own, because you have your own templated enemy view as a trooper company commander. That's what I need you to do. That's really, it's just like career course. It's the same kind of thing that you did there. You establish what your sit tent is, you build your event tent, you write your concept operation paragraph based on that. Well, you go back in and you confirm or deny stuff. And then if you want to make sure that you got it all, check the road big down and make sure you didn't forget anything. And then you go back and then you call it up. Because you may need to call up and tell the SCO, hey, I think this is going to limit my reconnaissance from here. I think if I move forward, I'm going to roll right into and become engaged and entangled, and I don't think that's what you want me to do. The reason I said we overuse stuff is because often a lieutenant or a captain will get so excited, the next thing you know, they have committed the entire task force into a fight that he didn't want to fight. Okay? That's really all I had. Anybody else got any other questions? Sergeants Major, Other World, or staff? Anybody want to jump in or pile on anything? Any questions that you have? First Sergeant? Okay, what's next?
All right, sir. Go ahead, Rob.
From here, everybody secure their covers. We're going to exit this door here. We're going to go up to the tank trail, take a left, and go up to the gravel yard just outside of the MCTC.
Right up on front, we do have the mine plow. This is set up in 3 different attachments. The middle portion needs to be put on first before the other. With the extensions, it can proof a lane up to 13 feet and 10 inches on here. Now the driver's port does have a camera. With this attachment, it's a little difficult to see, and the operator can use the camera as well as a flip down screen to be able to drive. As you look up on top, it does have a the only weapon that you put on it is a 50 cal. Then with the MICLICs, you have 2, but the actual extension and firing of those MICLIC systems is from within. Now, in order to operate the turret, you need 2 operators, man in the turret and the driver, to be able to move that. On the far end, you can see 2 things that are sticking out. That's our lane marking kit, pneumatic lane marking kit that can hold up to 50 hex poles in each side.
Okay, Capriano right here has what the lane marking system fires. It's fired pneumatically, as stated earlier. It has batteries that go in it. It illuminates and it heats. And as we described earlier along the map, it only shoots them down the width of the track. So you still have to have the dismounted sapper squads do the entry funnel, the exit funnel, and then on the near side, do the near recognition panel and the far recognition panel, giving everybody a chance to see, bracket everybody down onto the reduction area and the lane. All right. Are there any questions in regard to the assault breacher vehicle or BSA operations? Fantastic.
Captain Bradford could receive this intelligence either by a shadow, could be come from higher, or could from his lead element, or scouts out in front of him, notifying him to be as an opposite to his front. When he's notified of this obstacle, through visual means or through electronic means. He contacts battalion, battalion orders him to conduct an in-stride breach. As he's talking to battalion, he asks for further intel and develops a situation. He develops a basic plan during which he verifies friendly and enemy situation and establishes TRPs, direct fire responsibility, ensures FSOs prepared to execute suppression and observation missions, and conducts his final prepared fire checks on all engineer equipment. The commander at this time is most likely talking on 2 radios to multiple people to fires, maneuver, intel, electronic warfare assets, and all other assets at his disposal, working simultaneously with battalion and brigade. At this time, a lot is going on in one person's head, trying to ensure that all his assets are in place to accomplish the most difficult maneuver operations that we have. Company commander is going to call to hire and report to preparing to execute breach. Are there any questions at this time? Next step.
This stop is only really for the staff guys. Because I wanted you to see when you and the staff say, hey, this is an in-stride breach this company's conducting, how many captains in a company? That's his talk. He's gonna synchronize all the enablers in that turret while he's scanning for his company. It bears mentioning. I know, I just showed you a tank. You've all seen one, I got it. But I just wanted you to get a picture in your head of the one guy who's trying to synchronize electronic warfare, fires, movement, his smoke, his obscuration, and all those things we talked about are all happening in that one single turret as he tries to get his 3 platoons. But just like Major Dempsey said, it's hard, but it's not that hard. I mean, it's a simple 2 up, 1 back drill. You got a support force, you got a breach force, you got an assault force. He coordinates for it, he calls back to his 3, he gets the ops intel, he sets the fire's plan, he moves out, and we're off to the races. Tracking?
North is this way toward Command Sergeant Major Hughes. Our forces today will be moving from your left to your right. We are here. You park here at the green staple box. At this time, the support force represented by these tanks is positioned here, ready to move forward. And the breach force and the assault force are in their high positions, protected from indirect and direct fire. The commander received accurate obstacle intel and has identified where the point of the breach will be. He has decided to locate himself with the support force in order to control direct and indirect fires and ensure suppression upon the point of breach, which is decisive at this time. The support force moves to the support by fire position. As they're moving, the FSO will activate a CFZ over the reduction area, and the support force will begin to suppress the objective with indirect and direct fires. As the support force is moving into position, are there any questions regarding why the commander would position himself with the support force? That's a question primarily to the company commanders. Key elements of the support by fire position is you must have good observation of the far side objective, which is represented down here. This is to allow you to observe, to have direct fire upon the objective, but also to be able to observe your indirect rounds and to ensure obscuration for the point of breach. The commander will typically place himself there because it is a good point on the battlefield and he can command and control the rest of his forces. And then he can see the breach and he can tell, without actually being in the breach, how it is progressing. As you can see, the tanks are now moving to position. A key element the support by fire position is responsible for is obscuration. Today we are not being able to use smoke or else you would not be able to see what is going on. This is typical in breaching LPDs. We choose not to use smoke so you can actually see. They have begun to open fire and suppress the objective. It is key to know there has been, we have used a football analogy to determine where we are in the sequence. First down is when we have suppressed the enemy. It flows with Sosura. So when you have suppressed the enemy with direct and indirect fires, you have reached first down. When you have obscured the point of breach so that the engineers can move forward, then we have reached second down. At this time, we're going to go ahead and call the breach force forward as the support by fire position is supporting. It's key to understand the rates of travel of certain engineer equipment so that you can position them at the correct place on the battlefield and ensure that you have covering fire for them the entire time as they move forward. Today at Fort Riley and 2nd Brigade, first time we are using one of the Army's newest pieces of engineer equipment, the assault breacher vehicle. Up until this time, we've had to use multiple pieces of equipment to reduce different types of obstacles. In other words, we would need an ACE or some type of earth-moving equipment to take care of a tank ditch, and then some type of explosive device to take care of a minefield. The assault breacher vehicle gives us the ability to do both types of obstacles on one vehicle. In addition, the assault breacher vehicle has 2 MICLICs on it, as opposed to the one that the trailer carries, so we don't have to tie up 2 Bradleys for our multiple redundancy on the breaching assets. If you look to your front, you can see that the engineer force is emerging from their covered position. And we have indirect fire landing to suppress the obstacle. Our engineers today are employing their smoke generators on the M2A2 Bradleys. No, yes, they're my Bradleys, and yes, they have maintenance difficulties, but that is intentional. It's not their maintenance problems today. Some of you got it. assault breacher vehicle looks very similar to a tank because it is the M1A1 chassis that has been retrofitted and the turret changed out. Instead of the main gun, they've replaced it with a turret that is equipped with a 50 cal for survivability and protection close in, and as I stated earlier, 2 MICLIC tubs. There's 2 versions of the ABV. One has the combat dozer blade, that is what you'll be seeing today. That will be reducing the obstacle in front of you. The second, which we don't have with us today, is a full width mine plow. Differences. Combat dozer blade can take up to 1 strike on a mine, on an anti-tank mine. The full width mine plow can take 3. The full width mine plow also clears a much wider track. At this point, as the engineers move forward, they will establish near side security. This is 3rd down. Typically, you will see this done with tanks because they are more survivable and they are needed in order to go into to plow and to proof the breach lane. Because of the ABV and its ability to proof, we do not need a plow on a tank to actually proof anymore. So this allows us to move our tanks around the battlefield and not tie them down there if the maneuver commander chooses not to. When making this decision as to what vehicles to do near side security with, the maneuver commander needs to take into account the types of direct weapon fires that will be at point breach. If our small fire position does his job, there will be no direct fires at the point of breach, and this will be a new point. As you can see, as the assault breaching vehicle moves forward, it will use the tank for combat dozer blade. We also have a redundant. Today we have a redundancy breaching asset, which is the Bradley with the MICLIC trailer. As he's getting ready to breach, if you look to your far out, you will see the S-17 panel showing it is the first approach marker. It is 200 meters out from the beginning of the obstacle. As you want to find that marker, you know that you are on a direct line with the obstacle and where you want to go through. move forward, the assault force will finish its approach to the objective, and we'll get in position to finish the breach. As I was stating earlier, what we've done is taken two-man demo teams and we have placed them in the infantry Bradleys. This is a technique that we can do, and it doesn't require a lot of coordination beforehand. We just get with the infantry platoon leader and we take a couple guys and put them into Bradleys. If space is an issue, then we can cross-load infantrymen into our Bradleys to help with any other mission and tasks that we have to do.
See on that far ridge line over there is the wire obstacle that the company commander could see from about 2 clicks out. They're going to move up and they're going to do their assault drill. There's a couple things the boss talked about that are demonstrated here. One, controlling your direct fire. You'll notice the tankers from Thunderbolt aren't just spraying all their ammunition at once. They're doing controlled bursts on targets in the trench line that they can see. Two, if you shoot your wad and blow all your equipment in the actual tactical obstacle, you will not make the protective obstacle and you will not make the trench line. So you gotta have something that can get you into the trench line, through the defensive mines and claymores and wire that'll be around that trench line. Trench lines are very problematic at NTC. Soldiers in trench lines don't get killed by artillery. Soldiers in trench lines at NTC do not get killed by tank rounds or tank coax very well. It takes an infantryman to get into that trench line and get him out of there. So when they're in trench lines on the Iron Triangle or somewhere else, with AT-5s it gets very problematic, which is the situation we're replicating here.
As the infantrymen move into position, it's probably a good time to discuss, when you're using Bangalores, and my guys are out there with Bangalores, position your personnel is important. Bangalores will kill people, bottom line, right? So SDZs, you're standing back here because we have a 300-meter SDZ for people standing in the open, for soldiers standing in the open. That's why we're back here. If you want to be closer, we can do that. We have Bradleys forward. Those gentlemen are approximately 100 meters from the obstacle. Okay. If necessary, you can get closer if you take the proper precautions, i.e., obviously in combat you're going to be wearing your full PPE, so that's not an issue, that's help, that will take care of a lot of stuff. But you need to get down, get behind cover, hunker down. Bottom line is the SDZ on the Bangalore is 200 meters to the rear and to the front, and 1,000 meters to the left and right. We in the Bangalore is placed long ways. You see now, the engineers are dismounting with the Bangalores and sprinting forward with them on their shoulders. In a combat situation, this is all being done under fire, so the Bradleys would be laying down suppression on the trench line to ensure that the engineers can get to the wire obstacle in front. Today we're doing 3 dismounted lanes. In a real-world situation, the assumption is one of those or 2 of those would not be placed, would not make it. We discussed redundancy earlier. When you are doing your planning, you want to plan that you lose 50% of the soldiers in the breach. After the Bangalores blow, we're going to walk forward so that we can actually see what's going on and actions on the objective. I can see you want to do that. While we're waiting, are there any questions, comments?
What's the range of Bangalore?
Range. The question was the range of the Bangalore. It'll clear a path. We can, if we put 2 placed correctly, you can makes it a clear path wide enough to drive a Bradley through. So the question was, the misfire times of the Bangalore is the same as with all demo. If you do it correctly, meaning if you dual initiate it, you can do 2 command dets or 2 command det and a time fuse. Kind of help cut some of the time down, but 15 minutes is what you want to wait. And also on that is they're going to proof these lanes as well to make sure there's no unexploded C4 in the lanes. You want to add it? Major Phillips was bringing up, one of the things we took out today was grappling. Normally, my soldiers would grapple from the Bradleys to the protective obstacles to clear out any anti-personnel mines to the front. Because even though the United States does not use anti-personnel mines, not everyone plays by our rules. So we took that out in the interest of time. If you're interested in a grappling demonstration, I'd be more than happy to get some of my soldiers to give you a lesson on that.
Yeah, if you've never done it on a suck scale, it's pretty sucky.
Especially when it's muddy.
Especially when it's tall grass.
So, it looks like the soldiers are behind the Bradley and they're doing their final checks on the system before they pull the M81. All right, gentlemen, ladies, let's go ahead and walk forward. All right, it's time. The engineers are going to go back to the wire obstacle and proof and mark the lane. Daytime marking is pretty simple. The engineer tape, it'll also mark the left handrail. At night, it's chem lights. One of the things you want to make sure is talk to your engineers and make sure they didn't have to make any changes due to availability of supplies. Touchdown signal, that way it's staying between mounted and dismounted. You don't have to learn anything new. And the infantry begins to flow out of the Bradleys to assault the objective. Under the infantry PL's plan, they've decided that they will take the objective flowing from north to south. So they'll be using the northernmost lane. If that lane has become closed, they have secondary, tertiary plans to use. The engineers remain at the dismount lanes to guide the infantry through in case there's any problems with fire they're calling up, and definitely at night they will stay there to make sure that they get through the proper place and they don't become tangled on C-wire. You need to communicate between the dismounted personnel and your support by fire squad, in this case is your Bradleys. So they're using the BS-17 panel on a pole to mark the front line trace so that the Bradleys can go ahead and automatically adjust the support by fire position, staying in front of that BF-17 panel to avoid friendly fire. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the breach LPD. If you have questions for a specific part, whether it be the support by fire, the breach force, assault force, we have them standing by. We can get them on the radio to bring them here, or I'm here for any questions as well. Before I dismiss Blue Babe 6, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, bring it in real quick, bring it in. Like, you're all spread out. I don't know if you're bored or tired or hungry or just ready for Friday, but just bring it in for a minute. Listen, we designed this LPD this way very deliberately. It was a company in-stride breach. The LPD is not about how great I mean, you saw some tanks, you saw a couple of things blow up. For those of you who haven't been on a battlefield, that should have been awesome. For those of you that have, that should have been just slightly boring. The point is not to do set-piece breaching that is a huge freaking dog and pony show. The point is to develop a leader development climate where officers are not afraid of obstacles, everyone knows how to breach, you know how to do it on the fly, and you're able to empower the brigade to move fluidly through obstacles. Does that make sense to you? So if this is the first time you've seen it, I'm glad you got to see one. If this is the 10th time you've seen it, I hope you see it 10 more times. Because when you do it in combat on the two-way shooting range, you ought to be very comfortable and fluid. The enemy is going to overwatch his strongest obstacles with his weakest forces. That's the way you array a defense. So if you want to fight the enemy's main battle forces in the open, hua, if you'd rather fight a squad-size element through a breach, that might work too. Neither one is better, but you should know how to do both. I appreciate your time and attention out here today, and I appreciate you spending half a day with the Blue Babe. I'll turn it over to Colonel Brown if he has any other closing comments. Sir?
Hey, so, y'all hear me in the back? Hey, just a couple of points. Remember this when you're in charge of an LPD. So if you want to know how I want to do an LPD, we want to do them like this, okay? Everybody understand?
Oh, yes, sir.
So you could do an LPD like this during PT with your company or your platoon. You don't have to do stuff always. It doesn't have to have some super big plan. Sometimes you can do stuff on the fly where you talk through issues and you get people discussing. Most of the time, that's the best way when it's just, it kind of bubbles up. What's on people's mind, what people want to know about, all right? The other part of this is if you're a tank, you want to kill tanks, right? If you're a Bradley, you want to be fighting, you want to get your infantry in position. If you're an artillery piece, you want to shoot rounds. If you're an engineer, you want to breach, right?
Oh.
The point is, we don't do all of those things as a stovepipe. We've all got to work together. That's what combined arms is all about. Especially if you're in a combined arms battalion, the only thing that looks like a combined arms battalion is a BCT. The combined arms battalions, the three that we have, you have the capability to do all of this yourself. That's what I need you to train and focus on. I'm not always going to be able to give you everything that we have for the brigade. Sometimes you're going to have to do it yourself. So you got to think that way and plan that way. All right, Cap Squadron, I don't want you to have to do this unless we absolutely, we're in a weird position and something's got to happen. Okay, CJ, I definitely don't want you doing this. If you do, please give me a call. Anybody got any questions for me? All right, sergeants, major, first sergeants, non-commissioned officers, did we leave anything out? Anything you really want to talk about that we didn't cover? Now's the time to do it. What's up, Sergeant Major?